So thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, and thanks for also my colleagues, organizers, for helping us. I think it's a great day that we are having. Celebrate life and celebrate science. So I think that it's a pleasure, but it was not easy to organize this talk. So I think from all the talks that I've given here, to find the equilibrium between, I will talk about my things, the things that I've done with Pepe, no better other things. It's not so easy, but so I hope I don't bore you too much, that at least we have some time together. So this is why also the title is so strange, but also already says how much I was thinking about what I'm going to talk about. So the title is Antimicrobial Resistance, One Health, Plasmids and Phages, and the Moon. So this is the current human beings that we are on Earth, and as you know very well, on the 15th November of this year, suddenly we are 8,000 million people, which is a lot of people. So something has happened here, that has made us human beings towards health very successful. What is it? The discovery of antibiotics. Vaccine people will say also vaccines. People working with water hygiene will say also water hygiene. But I say, today for all of us, it's antibiotics, okay? So antibiotics, thanks to Fleming and so on, made a complete revolution in human beings. So all modern medicine, all surgeries, etc., is based on the fact that we control bacteria. But the fact is that antibiotic resistance develops, and develops fast. A couple of years ago, it was killing 700,000 people per year. Now we know it's more than 1.2 million people per year in the world. And only in Spain, it kills 4 times more people than car accidents. We are all the time hearing so many people died in car accident and on the weekend and so on. We hear it in the Spanish news, but I would like you to also hear about the people that die in our hospitals. It's the people that I want to give a voice. It's the anonymous patients and anonymous people that are killed because antibiotics do not work anymore on them. And the fact is, we are checking antibiotic resistance in Europe all the time, and antibiotic resistance advances, and I would say it's out of control. How does it look like? Not very good. Not very good. So this is the amount of, so what we are doing is we are trying to control the use of antibiotics, right? So this is the amount of antibiotics that we are using in humans, more or less in Europe, it's more or less constant. The antibiotics, and I will come to that later, in animals, we are reducing, but look at this. In the developing countries, antibiotic use is increasing a lot. It's more population, more access to health, and we are using more and more antibiotics. And as you know very well, the more antibiotics you use, the more antibiotic-resistant bacteria will develop in the world. The prediction is that by 2050, 10 million people will die every year only of antibiotic resistance. The classical prediction of Jim O'Neill, everybody says it, you see it in the news. That was on 2014, and the sentence was, if we don't do anything, this is the prediction. So we have done several things. There's more consciousness in society. In general, we try to do some things, but in general, other things have happened that make this idea a bit worse, and that is our famous COVID. COVID has made that we have been using many more antibiotics, especially last resort antibiotics, not only in our countries, but also worldwide. And that has increased a lot antibiotic use. And as I said, antibiotic use has accelerated even the development of antibiotic resistance worldwide. This is in Spain, and we have seen not only of certain antibiotics, but also of this last resort antibiotics that we use in our intensive care units. But this is in our countries, so Europe, developed world. In the developing world, it is even worse. And we have numbers, but I'm not going to give you the numbers. Because with the COVID, what has happened is we have had a lot of people in our intensive care units. And these people, when they are intubated and don't have a lot of space, have more infections. And if you have more infections in the intensive care units, you use more antibiotics, especially last resort antibiotics that we use, especially in our intensive care units. So we have the numbers, and we know it very well. We have many more antibiotic-resistant bacteria to last resort antibiotics now than 2 years ago. So probably 10 million people will die of antibiotic resistance by 2040 or earlier. So we've accelerated a lot resistance in the world. We have seen these different scenarios in different parts of the world. We are working for many years already in Ghana, and we have seen, okay, let's check from a population point of view, the antibiotics that are used in the hospitals. These antibiotic-resistant bacteria go to the drainage, go to the wastewater. Let's look in the wastewater of the hospitals if we have many or not many antibiotic-resistant bacteria. What do we have? So we have taken water in these hospitals, before the hospital, in the hospital, and after the hospital, and we see here that in a milliliter of water, we have 10 to the 4 antibiotic-resistant bacteria, not antibiotic-resistant bacteria, bacteria resistant to carbapenems. And for those of you that don't know what the carbapenem is, it's a last resort antibiotic. It's strictly intravenous use, so we don't use it in the home, only in the hospital, and only in our intensive care units where you are half dead there. Then they give you the last carbapenem shot. If it doesn't work, you die. And this is the number that we are having in Africa. So you say, well, wastewater, wastewater. But the wastewater in Africa is this. The wastewater in Africa is surface wastewater. So all the population, all the people, all the animals have access to that wastewater, because that's that wastewater from the hospitals that is afterwards having a drainage all over the city and all over the population, with access to animals, children, population, food, etc., etc. So this is probably one of the hotspots of production of resistance, is probably hospitals in developing countries. We know that today. Interestingly, when we had a look at those bacteria that were in the wastewater, we were expecting this will be the classical, the classical bacteria, Klebsiella, E. coli, they are coming from the hospital and they are there. But the fact is that we found some E. coli eventually. I think there was one here, an E. coli, a Klebsiella, and the other bacteria, Delphtia surrogatensis, Camomonas aquatica. So these bacteria, I've honestly not heard a lot about them. So I said, why are they intrinsically resistant to the antibiotic, or what happens there? So we sequence all these bacteria, and we sequence them to know the exact structure of the plasmid and so on, with nanopore and Illumina sequencing, and to know exactly what is happening. And what we saw is that we found the plasmids that we found in the hospital, when they are in the wastewater, in that rivers that you saw, the plasmid don't stay in the enterobacteria, because the enterobacteria are not so happy in the water. There are other bacteria that are more happy in the water. So these plasmids are conjugated into this environmental bacteria, and these environmental bacteria are the ones that are harboring all these carbapenemases and antibiotic resistance genes. So there's a reservoir in the environment of antimicrobial resistant bacteria that is not the ones that we are normally looking for. That are environmental bacteria that are keeping for themselves all these antibiotic-resistant plasmids that eventually then, when a child drinks it or so on, the plasmid goes into an enteric bacterium of the child and kills it. So this is, we just found new antibiotic resistance genes that have never been described in the world. We just found new variants and so on and so on. So there's many new things happening there. This for one thing that I just wanted to show you a bit. In the WHO, what we are doing is we are focusing on humans. And we are saying, okay, we have then antibiotics that we can use in humans and shouldn't use at all in animals. And now it is still open, so please help us. Until the 28th of February of 2023, you can make comments to this document that we just brought out for public discussion. And that is so that we could have the input of different parts of the world, especially of intelligent microbiologists, most of you, all of you. And so that we can have a bit your input about what you think about the antibiotics that we are saying and so on. So if you can help us, that would be nice. But as said, no. But on top of it, when we started to use antibiotics, we didn't use them only in humans. That's what I said. We also use them in animals and also in the environment. All over the ecosystems, we used antibiotics. And eventually, because animals also become diseased from time to time. So it's not that we like to give them to animals because it's very fun. No, animals sometimes have the right to get a disease, and we have to treat them with antibiotics, because these diseases, as you can see, are exactly the same. So we started to look not only at humans, but at humans, animals, and the environment already some years ago. So already in 2004, I was lucky. I came with a Ramón y Cajal. The Spanish people would know what it is, with Ramón y Cajal. And the first project that I got, a very large project was surveillance of emerging antimicrobial resistance critical for humans, but not to look only in the humans, but to look at them in food, in environment, and in animals, and in men. And this concept of trying to save human health, but looking at the environment and in animals is called something that you should know by now, by today, that is called the One Health concept. Okay, so this One Health concept is a concept by which we try to save human lives, but not only looking at human lives and what is happening in the hospitals, because as I showed you, and I hope that I convinced you, not everything happens in the hospital. Many things happen outside the hospital. So we have to have this One Health concept to fight against, especially antimicrobial resistance. And this is why the world organizations have signed, not long time ago, a quadripartite. It is something that you should know. So the WHO, the FAO, and the OIE, this is for animal health, and the United Nations Environmental Program have signed now a collaboration to fight against antimicrobial resistance together. Antimicrobial resistance and other things. Because, as you know, some viruses can go from bats to humans in China and then spread to the world. So that had also to convince these guys to say, maybe some things happen in the environment. Some things happen in the environment. And so this slide starts to tell you, 11 minutes, fine. It's showing you that some bacteria also spread directly from animals to humans, because you could say, well, my contact with animals, you know, is not that great here in our world. How many animals have you touched? We'll show you. Have you touched? In the case of Salmonella, and I wanted to give you this example, Salmonella, we have more than 500,000 cases in every year. Thank you, Jay, for saying it before. But many people die because of it. And the fact is that it was not said that in nearly all the cases of Salmonella in the world are because there's a direct transmission of Salmonella through food normally, or direct contact to humans. So there's a direct transfer of bacteria from animals to humans with all the things that are inside the bacteria. And when we talk about this, we see that there's a transmission in some places of the world where there is a direct transmission, as you can see, of animals and humans. In Europe, what we have is probably this. You haven't touched many cows or pigs probably in the last 2 years, but maybe you have licked the mouth of your dog several times, you know? So maybe we should think about our habits, but that's the case. So we are now in Europe checking a bit to what extent the animals are a reservoir, or yes, a reservoir of different antimicrobial resistance genes, etc., of humans. And there are many data we've already found. Hospital clones clones in our intensive care units in the gut of our dogs. But this will come another day. So we like transmissions. We are talking about transmission, obviously, transmission of antimicrobial resistance. And when molecular microbiologists hear about transmission, we like it. We like it because we think about conjugation and transduction and transformation, you know? Exactly. It's sex between bacteria as well. So when we talk about this transmission, we think very often about plasmids. So we analyzed all the plasmids that we have, in the world, and most of them are large size, big plasmids, you know. But many times we have small plasmids. And these small plasmids don't even have mobilization genes. Most of them don't have relaxase and mobilization genes. And these small plasmids normally are in high copy, 20 copies, 30 copies. So if we would make here a proportion of the number of these plasmids and the quantity, it will be super high, super high. So we concentrated a bit on these small plasmids. How do they move? First, we wanted to know where they are. And this we showed just a couple of months ago, where these small plasmids that in the beginning they were called col-E1 plasmids because they had this colicin plasmid a colicin resistance gene, but now they have many antibiotic resistance genes, so they are all over you, okay? All Enterobacteria, all Pasteurella, Vibrio aromonas. So these small plasmids are present in all bacteria. So already, as Stan said, they have already worked a lot on phages and plasmids because to develop tools to manipulate Salmonella. But we wanted to know what is the relevance of this phages plasmid combination, if there is, in real life in antimicrobial resistance. So the first thing that we did is we needed a good genetic marker for our plasmids. So this is the ribosome. We discovered some years ago an antibiotic resistance gene, which only putting a methyl group in the ribosome, already gives high level resistance to aminoglycosides. This is a very good marker because it's independent of the copy number. And we are talking of high copy number, low copy number plasmid. If you use ampicillin or whatever enzyme as a marker, we would have always a bias because when it's expressed in high copies, that would be more resistant, and low copy, low resistance. So the first thing is to choose a good marker. And we chose a good marker, this one, because in the single copy and high copy, it gives the same resistance level. First thing, check, done. Second, a good plasmid model. So there are many plasmids that you could choose, but what we did is that we chose 3 small plasmids, 4,000 kb, 5 kb, and 5 kb. We cloned in them exactly the same resistance gene, and we checked for the copy number. So this plasmid, PUG, I think it tells you something. PUG, we had it more or less in 42 copies per cell. This other plasmid, PCR1, in 23 copies per cell, and PAC1C in 8 copies per cell as a model. And in our next, and what we also did is we marked large plasmids up to 127 kbs, so very large plasmids, conjugative plasmids, also smaller, and smaller from different incompatibility groups. All of them marked exactly with the same genetic marker. So once we have that, we decided to do our experiment. And what we saw in our experiment, when we saw how much these genes were encapsulated, dependent on if they were on a high copy plasmid, small high copy plasmid, or a large monocopy plasmid, what we can see here is that in all cases, the genes in the plasmids that are in a small multi-copy plasmid are encapsulated by phages up to 10 to the 4 times more efficiently than if the resistance gene is sitting in a monocopy on a large plasmid, which is somewhat logical. You have many copies, then the phage comes, and the probability of encapsulating you is much higher than if you are in a single copy on a large plasmid. So then we said, okay, let's do then transductions. Let's see if there's really a transmission of this antibiotic resistance gene to, sit down,
I'm having a nicer view from here. Please don't touch and transmit anything to me. Thank you.
It's impossible. So we did the experiment with a transduction, you see, and then we saw if there's really more transmission of these plasmids. And to make a long story short, we did the experiments, and in fact, all the plasmids that were low copy were transducted with a much higher frequency than those ones that are in large plasmids. There's a direct relation between this plasmid size and the transduction, and also with the plasmid copy number. And we checked with PCRs all these transductions, and all of them had arm A. And some of them, you saw that there are very few. Some of them also on large plasmids, they were able to capture this arm A gene. So we checked all the transductions of the small plasmids, and all of them, by doing a PCR outwards, you can amplify the complete plasmid. You follow me? And then all of them were having this small plasmid round in a circular form. And the large ones, now we're sequencing them. And what we see is the large ones, none of them is exactly in the same form as in the original form. What we found in the transduction, the few transductions that we have, is we find like a puzzle mixture of bits and pieces with the arm A gene in one place, in the other, or the other, even sometimes in the chromosome. And this is what we are analyzing now. Who decides what fragments, what combinations, and so on. And we have some ideas who is really directing this. So to summarize, we identified multi-copy plasmid transduction. We called it like that. because when a small plasmid is in high copy numbers, it's transduced efficiently, and when it's in large copies, it's transduced very badly. And this for antibiotic resistance spread and so on, it's very important. So there's a cooperation of phages with plasmids in antimicrobial resistance. This I'm not going to show you because it's office pressure, but to finish, so this is our current website, and I wanted so we all, of course, we still remember Pepe a lot. This is my current lab, but I also wanted to thank the people that were in my lab, especially this talented José Antonio Escudero from my lab, where obviously also Álvaro Samillán, where we can see that fun and science is compatible. And I was thinking of finishing here, but I think I will not. So, yes, who said it? Thank you, Joselito.
It's missing.
My beloved baby, you know, the only one that listens to me. So the moon, exactly. So why the moon? So when I looked into Pepe's emails, and I don't know if you do it, but it's like talking to somebody, not to hearing him. I rescued one email from him. For the English people, I will send it to you translated and so on. I'm sorry. Querido Bruno, gracias por enviarme Deutsches Requiem, el Requiem de Brahms, que sé que a nosotros nos gusta. Sorry, Requiem Brahms, it's the one that we like. Ya lo conocía, pero me ha encantado releerlo. Tu mensaje revela otra sintonía en nuestra amistad, así que aprovecho para mandarte un poema muy borgiano. El poema de Borges es apropiado para nuestra conversación filosófica de hoy. Un abrazo, Pepe. And now I'm going to read it to you. I was thinking of projecting it, but I will not. I will read it so that you listen to me. I think it's very vital. It's called La Cifra. La cifra, the number, la cifra. La amistad silenciosa de la luna te acompaña desde aquella perdida hoy en el tiempo noche y atardecer en que tus vagos ojos la descifraron para siempre, en un jardín o un patio que son polvo. Para siempre, yo sé que alguien un día podrá decirte verdaderamente, no volverás a ver la clara luna. Has agotado ya la inalterable suma de veces que te da el destino. Inútil abrir todas las ventanas del mundo. Es tarde. No darás con ella. Vivimos descubriendo y olvidando esa dulce costumbre de la noche. Hay que mirarla bien. Puede ser la última. Thank you.